Hello and welcome everybody to Latea Remoto. Today, hello and welcome everybody to Latea Remoto. Today we have a tertulia, a conversation, a frank and engaging conversation with none other than Jaime Estades. He is an attorney. He is also involved in the Latino Leadership Institute, a professor, many hats. Welcome, Jaime. How are you?
Fine, I'm doing well. Thank you for inviting me. You know, I love Latea, so anything for
Yes.
Latea.
This is a disclaimer. Jaime Estades has been a board member for around a year, give or take. And he also, early on in my tenure here, he brought a remarkable play to our stage called Five Sessions. And part of the aim of this interview is to actually promote Five Sessions because we're going to be streaming it in full this Friday. So this is part of that kind of conversation to sort of show you the man behind the piece. And Jaime, when I'm thinking about you, as we have spoken and the things I've read about you, I want to divide this interview perhaps into the theater aspect, the college teaching professor, you know, the teaching aspect, and of course, the political advocacy, social justice, and and equality, but maybe not in that order. Let's start with the political first. Let's go broader and then narrow down. I am very, or I think people should know, those that don't, I'm sure a lot of people from the Institute are watching. Talk to me a little bit about the aims of the Latino Leadership Institute. It keeps coming up. You guys are very active. I keep getting a lot of exciting programs, invitations to great and exciting programs. What is the Latino Leadership Institute?
Well, the Latino Leadership Institute is basically the East Coast version of the Southwest Voter Registration Program that was created originally by Willie Villegas, who was one of the lieutenants of the leadership, the farm workers' leadership in the Southwest. So in 1996, I was assigned as the director of the Hispanic Education and Legal Fund in the East Coast, and we divided the country in three sections: the Southwest, the Midwest, and the East Coast, in order to mobilize the vote, the Latino vote in 1996. The Hispanic Education and Legal Fund basically took the East Coast, and I organized the whole East Coast and part of the Midwest in terms of voter registration and get out the vote operations.
So that's it. The genesis is the vote, to get out the vote,
to get out the vote and to train people in order to run campaigns and to organize politically. We didn't have that in the East Coast until we did that project with our Chicano brothers in the Southwest and the Midwest. So after the 1996 presidential election, what I decided was that I was going to organize permanently an organization in the East Coast that basically did that work. And since 1998, we have been doing that work on and off, but especially during the last 10 years in the East Coast and mostly in New York City.
And of course, I've read the description that branches out into social justice, public policy, and these very crucial aspects of our civic life, right? Today in the United States of America, and now in this East Coast, where you have been advocating when you sort of branched out from the West Coast, right? From the West Coast origin. Tell me something, what kind of an arch, what have you seen? You're talking about 1996, we're here on the eve of the elections for 2020. What have been the ups and the downs? What is kind of that advocacy? What has it shown and how important is it going forward right now?
Well, it's interesting that now we have less protections in terms of voting than we used to have in 1996. For example, we have the Supreme Court decisions like Shelby County versus Holder that basically eliminated the Voting Rights Act Section 4, that basically gives validity to the Voting Rights Act. That was eliminated, that was in 2014. Then Citizens United that basically says that corporations are people, meaning that corporations can put as much money as they want in elections, unlimited amount of money without any check and balances. So those things are basically monsters, political monsters of the 21st century. They were not there in 1996. So the voter suppression that we have been seeing lately in the last 10 years, it has been increasing every year more and more. And we're expecting the voter suppression in 2020 to be one of the biggest ever, at the same time that we're expecting the biggest turnout in the history of the United States for a presidential election. We're also expecting the biggest voter suppression tactics throughout the United States. And it's basically because the debilitation of Citizens United and the Shelby County Supreme Court decision. So things used to be a little bit better then in the 1990s than now.
And would you say that erosion, right? That erosion or suppression, as it were, of some voting rights or possibilities, is it being met by other organizations such as the one you espouse, the Latino Leadership Institute? Are there caucuses? Are there like Black or Afro-American institutions, Chinese American institutions? Or is there a coalition like that? Is it getting balanced, meaning the advocacy part sort of stepping up to the vacuum or the dearth of rights or the erosion, as we said?
Well, that's a great political question. So I think that, yes, that's one of the challenges that we have. But what we're seeing is a lot of non-partisan organizations that believe in the political empowerment of the people, regardless of party or affiliation, that there are more non-profit organizations and non-partisan organizations doing that type of work. For example, the Latino Leadership Institute is now working with Columbia University on something called Social Work Boats. This is the Graduate School of Social Work and other schools throughout the East Coast in the United States in a coalition like the one we did in 1996 in order to register people and to bring people out to vote. It was almost inconceivable to have an organization, an institution like Columbia University working hand in hand with a non-profit, non-partisan community organization. Columbia University, that usually, it was in a bubble and this is impenetrable.
The Ivory Tower, the Ivory Tower.
The Ivory Tower. Well, we have made some progress in making sure that now they are working together with community groups. And that's what we're doing in terms of the voting this year. We have Reverend Barber in September 15. He's going to be talking about the vote. He's from North Carolina. Then we're going to have a conference in September 26 about the vote, the Latino Leadership Institute and Columbia University. So these are real progress. I mean, we're breaking the ice in areas breaking ground in areas where people thought that ground couldn't be open. So we keep our fingers crossed anyway.
Definitely. And for those joining us or those that are thinking, wait, I thought I zoomed into La Terremoto. This is a theater where we're talking to a playwright here who has many hats, and we're starting from this broad perspective of political community, political advocacy, and we will, work through many areas. And since you mentioned Columbia University, and I know you have a long-standing relation with that university, I know you adjunct for them. Let's talk a little. I'm an adjunct too. I adjunct for Baruch College, and I see that you are with NYU, you're with Columbia, you're with Rutgers. Jaime, what do you teach?
Well, I teach legal foundations at Columbia University once in a while. It's for the students who are doing the dual program with Columbia University and with Columbia Law School and doing social work too. I'm a social worker and I'm a lawyer. And I teach advocacy, I teach social policy, and now 5 sessions in January, the play is going to become officially a class, a 15 sessions class at Columbia University because the success of the play. You know that when we did it at Latea, a lot of students and a lot of professors, not only from Columbia, but from Fordham, from all the universities came. You know, we packed Latea every
we were very
night.
grateful. It was like a dream come true. I wish more places were like that. And now, you know, with the new world, who knows? But yeah, so then 5 sessions has officially become part of the curriculum. It's a class.
Yes.
And prior to that, when we agreed to show it at Latea, when we came together for that, it was already being used as a teaching tool. So at the beginning, it was not required, or what's this transition from it being a tool to being the class? What's going on?
Well, the story is funny because when I wrote the play, I wasn't teaching at Columbia, but it was based on a graduate from Columbia University.
Yeah, right.
And that's the joke throughout the play, because the client, in a very funny way, trying to make fun of the therapist, he called her throughout the play Columbia instead of her
name,
you know, yeah, her real name. So I didn't know that when I wrote this play, and we put it originally at Julia de Burgos in East Harlem, that we also packed there, that I was going to end up teaching at Columbia, where I was making fun of Columbia University, especially social workers. It is just something that blows my mind every day that I think about it. And not only that, that it became a class at Columbia University. So they were.
Do you think that influenced them? Maybe, I mean, that serendipity of you sort of putting that as a brand, and then you ending up in the ivory tower teaching, as it were. The fact that it references them, do you think that might have also, it's personal, let's just put it that way. They might have thought it's personal, and now they're owning it. Do you think that has something?
The thing is that they didn't know that I had written that play when they hired me.
They didn't. Now that they're using it as a class, of course, I understand.
Oh, yeah.
But now that they're using it as a class, do you think it's almost like pride, even, you know?
Oh,
pride?
no. A real pride, you know, a lot of professors came. Look, they gave us $18,000 to create the class because we need to film again the play. So not only they gave us the class, we already have the $18,000.
Okay.
So it is not, there is no other class that gets money. You do the class and you go and teach and you get paid for the class. But this is a class that came with money. Wow. So it's amazing, you know, that because we have to film.
Possibilities also to cross-pollinate and do things across the academic spectrum, you know, the creative, the craft, and also the social work and you know, psychiatry and areas that are coming together in your play. That's incredible. What challenges? I mean, so we're moving very fast. We went political, then we went academic. Now we're in the place. So I guess we'll be like a slot machine. Talk about the months. But going back to this remarkable invitation, funded as it were, as you're saying, to film the play. Do you foresee, as the writer, because I know you've been very involved in all the productions. You certainly were very involved when it was with us here at Latea. Do you foresee any challenges with the filming? I mean, how is the translation into film? Are you going to keep it straight as a theater piece being filmed, or will you like to engage in other qualities that are more film qualities when you do this project going forward?
Well, we want to follow the model that Channel 13 uses on. They have plays that they film. And they film them with 3 cameras.
I see.
And it doesn't affect the motion in the play at all. You do the play, and you let the cameras and the editing do the rest without affecting what is happening in the play. That way, you keep two things separate, but at the same time, you are merging them eventually when you do the editing. But in order to do it correctly, we need the three cameras, and that's where the cost comes. Is also the pandemic. We have to take all the considerations when we have people working together. The good thing about the play is that it's only 4 characters.
I know, right?
And it's more controllable in terms of the interactions. But there are safeguards that we need to take in consideration when we start filming. We haven't started yet.
It's an ideal play. I mean, having had the remarkable experience, and by the way, I mean, you're a board member, but I'll put the plug anyway. Come film it at Latea. What I wanted to say is that play, again, it's pandemic times. It's very difficult right now for theaters such as ours and any theater. But I think it's a play that at least makes it easier if you take the proper care and the protocols to, it makes it easy on the house. It's not one of those Shakespeare extravaganza, Midsummer Night's Dream, 20 people or whatever. So no. I can't imagine it's going to be a smaller headache than some, it appears to me.
Yeah, I already spoke to Eddie Torres, who's the original director of Five Stations. He's a professor at Wesleyan University in the Department of Theater. He's Cándido Tirado's premier director. He's very well known. He's an excellent director. So he's already on board, and we're planning to bring many of the of people who participated already, the actors.
What about the cast? The cast that was here in Latea would be will be the same cast, or you're going to make some changes?
Well, that will be up to Eddie, but I think that it's going to be a combination of both of the first 2 workshop productions. See, we're still doing Five Stations as a workshop production because the idea is that it's going to move. Eventually, right. Like I always says, Latea is the best trampoline. Latea is a theater that basically
it's a laboratory. It's a lab,
anything that you want to experiment with seriousness, and that you want to see a real criticism, a good review. For example, I got real criticism from some of the friends of Latea in terms of the play, that it was extremely valuable. And I think that Latea gives more than the space, the excellent space that is there, and the rehearsal rooms, which are great. Besides all those things, Latea also has an expertise in terms of what theater is all about, in terms of the criticism of the script, the criticisms of the acting, the criticism of the direction. Everything is there. What happened, Miguel, is that sometimes we are so much in the middle of it that we don't see it. And then when you get out and you look at it from outside, Latea has everything to give to any new producers, any new writers. There is nothing in New York City like that provides all those different things that we provide at Latea, especially for the new talent that exists in New York City. And New York City, there is no other city in the world that produces so much talent than New York City. And Latea is perfect for that. So I definitely learned a lot just by having the play at Latea for the second time.
And while we're tearing silk and you've made my night, and from your mouth to God's ears, tell me something, Jaime, since we're talking about Latea now. Who brought you to Latea? Because I remember meeting you and having a great rapport right there. And then you came with this amazing project that really helped to lift, lift the boat at that time in 2018. We're talking 2018,
Yeah.
right? October or something like that, if I remember correctly.
September, yes.
Yeah, who brokered
Well,
that invitation?
well, you're gonna make me sad because the first I knew about Latea for decades. Latea is an institution of the Puerto Rican Latino community in the city of New York, but also in the tri-state area. I remember Latea for 25 years ago, when Latea, you know, I used to go to Latea,
Right.
many times. So Latea is always a place that any Latino writer wants to have their play done. But Marta Garcia was the one who brought me to Latea. She introduced me to you, introduced me to the rest of the group. And without Marta, the dream of having the play in a place like Latea would have never happened. And, you know, we lost Marta. It's very painful. I don't like to talk about it because before she left, we had lunch in East Harlem. We had a long lunch, and we were talking about Latea, the things that we can do at Latea. And it was a nice lunch, just the two of us. We talked like for 2 hours. And then 1 month later, I found out that
we lost Marta Garcia, co-founder of the Clemente Sotoveles, if you will, the whole building, and the founder, along with her husband, Nelson Landrieu, Mateo Gomez, and the Ecuadorian founder, Nelson, another Nelson, Nelson Tamayo. These are the people that make this happen. So thanks for mentioning her. And yeah, I remember that. I was just wondering, because I remember her introducing you, but I was wondering if there was another spot earlier on. But that being said, let's move on. I mean, we were talking about a little bit about academia, the relationship of the play. We're going to be streaming this Friday, which I strongly recommend. But I see you're with other institutions. You also have many hats in academia. You are not just competent, but obviously gifted to teach several things in your repertoire: law, social work, the political advocacy. These three areas that seem to be your mainstay. What are the differences? Because I've taught also in a couple of schools at the same time throughout my teaching career, and it's incredible how each field and each school and each set of students, you know, hey, they motivate you different. They're motivated by different things. Talk to me about that sort of variety that you have the privilege of engaging, you know, in terms of students and universities. Columbia, NYU. We're also talking about Rutgers. How do you feel?
Well, every university, and because that experience that I had in teaching in different universities, they have their own identity. Even if they're Ivy League or whatever, even inside the Ivy League, they have their own identity. Mm-hmm. And the identity, you see it through the students. Right. It's interesting for me because I teach at NYU that the student, and I don't know why, don't ask me why, I don't understand why, but the students at NYU and the students at Columbia are very different. The same at Rutgers University. You know, Rutgers University is more working class. You know, it's a state university. Columbia private, NYU private. But they have their own identities. Even when you can say that NYU and Columbia, you know, they basically, you know, it's for a class of students, more or less, with more money, more wealthy. There are differences. For example, the work that we're doing in terms of voting right now at Columbia with the Latino Leadership Institute. Latino Leadership Institute is a street organization, you know, in the sense that we work with poor people.
Grassroots, also grassroots.
It's 100% grassroots. And it has been completely easy to work with Columbia University and the students and the leadership there. I think that there is a big transformation. See, when you ask me things like that, then I start thinking about other ideas out of the spectrum. But I think that there is a big transformation in the United States in terms of, there is a polarization, an ideological polarization. You know, like, for example, the Republican and Democratic Party. One is becoming more leftist, one is becoming more right-winger, one more conservative, the other one more liberal. I think that that polarization is being reflected through the young people in the United States. Look what happened in Massachusetts yesterday. A 74-year-old beat a 36-something, 38-something Kennedy for the first time.
Oh, that's what you're talking about. I was like, okay, yeah.
For the first time. And what happened? The 74-year-old had the younger ideas, and the young people went with the 74-year-old, and the older people went with the one with the 30s. You know, so there is a change. And when you are in college, and you know in Baruch too, you know, Hector Cordero Guzman, who's a good friend of the Latino Literature Piece, is one of our teachers. He teaches at Baruch. You can see the different in the students. You see how the country, in the young people, how the country is moving and in what direction is moving. They always, without them knowing, thank God, because they can be.
They're portraying the zeitgeist,
And they're guiding us to the future. But it's good to observe them in order for us to have a better diagnosis of where we are and where we're going.
And then I think that's also, you could say something like that about the play, about 5 sessions. I mean, I'm really, the fact you're talking about students now and how they, whether they know it or not, are reflecting the direction. But then you have this play where you are butting heads between a working class stiff, right, that goes to therapy, and this wonderful, privileged young woman that's coming fresh off of Colombia. That's why she gets called Colombia. And you have perhaps a little bit of the clash that we are seeing with the parties today, with the monolithical.
Yeah, it's a class struggle type of play. You know, that's the essence of the play. For example, the first line of the super in the first session to her, because he doesn't trust her, because he can see the difference in terms of class, race, and culture immediately. And he's a very well-educated character. So he says to her, do you think that slaves in the South who have felt better about slavery if they have had therapy 3 times a week? So that's the question, and that's the criticism that I try to portray of psychology practice and clinical social work practice in the United States, because the practice in psychology is a bourgeoisie psychology that is a big practice in the United States.
And yet there is something very I hope it's prescient, and it's that you refuse to go for the stereotype, because in my mind, that working stiff, that proletarian working class guy reflected a remarkable education that sort of
exactly.
Put to shame the more educated female he was sparring with, not because she wasn't educated, not because, perhaps it's because she was young. So I thought there were other.
Yes, Miguel, you touched it. This is something that I really, no one asked me that. And that's exactly the point of the play. I wanted to show you and I'm sure that you too, the smartest people that I have met in my life have no college degrees. I have met many individuals who are so brilliant, who don't have a college degree, but they are readers. They understand and see things better than many college professors. I can name you people throughout my life that I have been amazed, and they have been my mentors. So I wanted to personify them on that character, because it's in our community. So I'm glad, thank you so much for the question, because that's exactly what the character is. It's that guy, that Juan Gonzalez that we see on the street all the time. and that give us all these lessons about life, about work, about science and everything. And that were, wow. He entered that office and he changed everything. And it's a criticism. What she learned, the bourgeoisie psychology therapy that she was taught cannot treat
Stand up to that. Yeah.
Exactly. First, because it's condescending, number one.
Right.
Number two, is in favor of the system of oppression. That's why the question about the slavery. Do you think that you will feel better if you have therapy 3 times a week you know, you can have therapy, but
it's still
so
slavery.
So what is the option? Escape, breaking the law, breaking the rules, because they're
cimarronaje.
Exactly, because it's oppressive. So is the psychology on the side of the oppressor that is being practiced in the United States? The psychology practiced in the United States is in favor of the oppressor, or is in favor of the poor, the client, the people of color and poor who are being oppressed, or they are doing the work of maintaining the person in their place and not helping to liberate them from the oppression in which they live.
And I have to tell you, it's very exciting to hear you. And also, I'm trying to situate a trajectory when I listen to you right now, because the fact that you're a fellow Puerto Rican here in New York, there are seeds for this in our 19th century arrival here. I'm thinking that to a certain extent, this character is channeling Los Tabaqueros.
Yes, exactly.
Some quote unquote uneducated readers of tobacco rollers, tobacco rollers that are eminently cultured. Without they didn't have college. So I think for the Latinos, and particularly for the Puerto Rican diaspora, or some of the Puerto Rican diaspora in the city of New York.
No better analogy than the tabaqueros culture of the even until 1940s migration of Puerto Ricans and Cubans, who, while they were working, they had a lecturer, a reader, what they call the reader, reading classics to them and engaging in Q&A with the workers as they roll the tobaccos. These tabaqueros, they used to go to listen to classical music at night right after work. No degrees, but you couldn't talk to them about anything that they haven't read or heard about it before, like any other professor. And that's where our friends that we were talking about before, that's an inheritance of the tabaqueros. And the character is an inheritance of the tabaqueros. No better analogy than the one that you just made. Thank you for that, which I'm going to steal from you.
Well, but that analogy, I also wanted to go into your personal history. I can see from your CV and from our conversations. I mean, you went to Sagrado Corazon in Puerto Rico, in San Juan. You've gone to Hunter College. You're a fellow, a Refson fellow at Columbia, and yet in your trajectory, I see this incredible points of contact with the reality. And I'm talking nothing more real than, for example, I know you were involved in a place called Enter, a program called Enter, drug addiction and alcoholism. I mean, how does someone like you, with your education, also your perspectives, your broad mind, how do you, is it New York that does that to you? Does New York force you to engage with certain realities that are often, academics can be very, I'm doing my stuff, I'm doing my dissertation, that's a junkie, I give him a buck and goodbye, leave me alone. So how does that reality break into your life, or how do you break into that reality yourself?
No, well, the thing is that it's totally the opposite. I was born in that reality and I was raised in that reality. It took me, I went to 5 universities before I graduated because I have issues of alcoholism and drug addiction and things like that. People don't know that.
Okay.
Yes, I was born and raised from that. but I never gave up studying. Never gave up studying. And then I kept going and I kept going and I kept going to where I am now. But I was born into
in a
that.
real context, in something really hard
No,
scrabble.
the drugs were around me since I was little. I lived in front of a basketball court in which all the dealers were there. And I played basketball and I played sports. But what people always tell me from that era, you see, the people from that era don't believe that I'm teaching at Columbia University or I'm a prof. They don't believe it. The people who know me now, they don't believe that I come from that era. It's like I don't fit anywhere, but I have lived now at this age, I can say that I live a complete life in the sense that I have lived, I know everything of the underworld and I know everything about the bourgeoisie, the middle class. But that's why even when I am a college professor, my analysis is always an analysis of class struggle because I resent as a college professor other professors in the way they put down the working class. And that's why I was able to put the Latino Leadership Institute, a grassroots organization, work with an institution like Columbia University, because I understand both worlds very well. And I don't think that they're antagonistic. It's just that the system keeps people divided.
That's bringing to mind, are you familiar, you must be familiar with Edwin Torres' work, you know, the novelist about Carlitos Way. For some reason, I was listening to a symposium yesterday by my mother, by Carmen Dolores Hernandez. She was talking about the long narratives, Piri Thomas, you know, and Judge Torres and Carlitos Way. How do you see your, so how many plays have you written, or is this your one play, or how many dramas have you?
I have 3 plays.
Okay.
And I stopped writing because I don't want to write and then getting an illusion that one day it's going to be on stage. It's so difficult for any playwright, especially unknown playwrights, to put a play on stage.
So how do you see yourself with these guys? You know, and they've made it big, of course, you know, Edwin Torres, the films, you know, Al Pacino, you name it. Piri Thomas, you know, sort of broke through for everybody way back, and with some of that hard scrabble realities that you've been mentioning that you also had to somewhat experience growing up. So how do you see your work in terms of our Nuyorican experience, of the Nuyorican milieu? Whether you consider yourself a Nuyorican or not, that's not the point. I'm just talking about this rich literary sort of background that informs us as New York Puerto Ricans, or Puerto Ricans in New York.
Well, where you are right now, in the Lower East Side, the best so-called New Yorican writers were born and raised right there in the Lower East Side. You know, there are plenty of them that we can mention. The New Yorkers Poets Cafe is a product of that. The #1 poetry place in New York City is a Puerto Rican business. It's the New Yorican Poets Cafe right in the Lower East Side, in which all those poets, Puerto Rican poets, began. So
how does that affect you? Like how is your work?
That nurtured me in the sense that I was surprised when I came from Puerto Rico to see that the descendants of Puerto Ricans that migrated to the United States, especially to New York, had such a pride of their heritage that many times I didn't see in the island. Yeah. And that they gave me even more strength in order to defend my identity in a place that basically tried to destroy my identity, because they were successful in beating those that were oppressing them. And sometimes the other side won because, you know, the issue of drug addiction, especially in that area during the 60s, the 70s, was really bad. But the talent that came out of there, but they could write about anything, not only about identity and culture. They were universal. They dealt with universal ideas. And they were stopped. They were ignored. You know, Piri Thomas.
Because they may once they broke through here, they were galactic. But yes, in Puerto Rico particularly, they were very shoved under the rug.
So you know, I have friends like Felipe Luciano. You know,
Yes.
Felipe. You know, we fight and all that, but you know, but Felipe is a good friend. You know, Felipe is a great poet. I remember listening to Felipe Luciano in a long plane from Eddie Palmieri in Sing Sing that he recorded at Sing Sing, the prison, in which Felipe begins with a poem, and it's in the long plane of Eddie Palmieri. And I heard that in Puerto Rico when I was a kid, and I didn't know much English, but I said, "Wow, what a poem!" And I still talk to Felipe when I see him. He comes to my classes. I bring him to my classes, and he talks to the students. And I said, you know, that was an inspiration for me. And Felipe is still alive, doing things. So, you know, thank God, because my mentors in New York were basically what are called New Yorkers. Without them, I don't know where I would be now, because I write like them. I try to write like them.
So and talking about writing and we've talked about, you know, the mentors who are more literary, but I also know that you were a part or founder or a moving influence, like in everything you do, you seem to be like El Abayalde. You know, you're pushing and creating and excelling. And I see El Pitirre here, and it caught my attention. So I know you were doing this alcoholism and drug addiction, where you were helping people with the Enter program in the 80s. And then it says here, 1990, this newspaper jumps off the page, El Pitirre. And what was that experience of running a little community newspaper? And I come from a newspaper family. I grew up around El Nuevo Dia, the San Juan Star, other papers in the island. So I like newspapers. I still buy the New York Times every now and then, and the Daily News and the New York Post and whatever I can get my hands in. What's with El Pitirre, man?
Oh, that's a great story. I was living in Washington Heights, and I moved to Los Sures in Williamsburg. What it used to be Los Sures, now is Williburg. Whatever the hell that is.
Washington Heights is Wahai, so hey, don't get too cocky, because Washington Heights is Wahai.
Wahai or Espaha. Now is Harlem, Spanish Harlem. Espaha. So, you know, they're changing everything. So I went to Los Sures, the south side in Williamsburg, to live there because I was a member of the Puerto Rican Socialist Party. And there was a section that is still remained there. The last section of the Puerto Rican Socialist Party was in Los Sures. So there they had a newspaper, a community newspaper for elections that it was called El Pitirre, but they put it to mobilize people in issues of housing. And then
and Despose and all that stuff.
Exactly. And then I took it with my friend Jose Medina and others, and Jose Medina and I would say, look, this has to be bigger. And we made it little by little for 7 years in a newspaper that it was citywide. It was distributed in the 4 boroughs where Latinos and Puerto Ricans, basically from the Bronx, East Harlem, Brooklyn, Queens. It was distributed citywide. We did it for free. We never had an advertisement because we were so pure.
I mean, at your involvement, I don't know if the paper survived your departure because you're a heavy hitter, but it says here 1990 to 1997. So
7 years.
That was the life of the paper.
7 years for free, constantly, and getting bigger and bigger. It was a real newspaper from a bulletin from
How
one-page bulletin.
frequently? Like a weekly, a monthly, a month?
No, we did it basically monthly, and we work with unions, with CSS, with Richie Perez from the John Lords, who gave us the printer of CSS, 1199, that gave us the printer. So, you know, we had good people, you know, all organizers, good organizers don't need money. We need money. We need money. Don't get me wrong.
I know, but
We
you
need,
have more than just money. You bring more than just money or
yeah,
the project.
yeah.
Well, in that sense, you were with the UAW too, with District 65 before. So perhaps that helped to create some kind of conditions for organizing, right? Because what were you doing with the UAW?
Well, I was in the members assistance program because I already had a degree in psychology. You know, when you are messed up and you are young and you want to study, what people, if they're smart, they take psychology because they get therapy without having to pay for it. And then they get a degree.
Okay.
So don't trust psychologists that much. So anyway, so I went at the members assistance program and I was working there helping the members in the, you know, for issues that alcoholism, drug addiction, mental health, etc. And, but then I became practically an organizer with the union because I couldn't sit down on an office and talk to someone and see the problems that they're having when I know that those problems are policy problems.
You wanted to be proactive to get to the heart of the program.
Exactly. See, because the thing is in psychology is that that policy can create trauma. And what can heal trauma is policy itself. So sometimes, but that's what I've said, that is a bourgeoisie psychology that is being used in the United States because they never go, especially with working people and poor people, they never go to the essence of the problems because the psychologists are told don't engage in politics. You see, you come to me and say, okay, let's organize a union. Mm-hmm. You know, let's organize the tenants. Mm-hmm. I have seen through my organizing that people feel better once they have a collective victory against a landlord. And I have experienced this and how their psyche improved completely because first it's a sense of empowerment that they did something that they thought that they couldn't do. And at the same time, their material needs are being resolved because of what they did. So that oppression is less when people empower themselves through organizing. Organizing is therapeutic too.
And is that why you're into theater? Is theater also like an outreach of that organizing, of that therapeutic quality to maybe transform the situation? Because I see your theater then perhaps as an offshoot of your social work. It's like an autosacramental. It's like a new type of autosacramental for a society in distress, and you're looking to inspire people with that theater. Could that be, or am I taking liberty?
Well, I'm proposing a new type of therapy. That's what is implied because it's a play. You cannot be too literal in terms of the message, you know.
Plus, it's entertaining. I mean, I thought the play was very engaging as a theatrical piece. I have to admit, I don't know. So
yeah. Well, you know, I have to have humor and all that, but I didn't want to spell the theory. But the theory is basically what I have been saying in terms of a criticism of the way psychology being practiced in terms of working class and poor people that is completely disconnected and is not that helpful, maybe in one case here and there, but not as a whole. And also the proposal is, the alternative to that, is that the macro and the micro aspects of clinical psychology and social work, they need to merge into one in which you do the clinical practice one-on-one, but also try to have the macro aspect, the social aspect, the organizing aspect, the empowering aspect that comes from the collective merging with the individual psychology. So it's combining the individual and the society. together in order to create a therapy that basically helps, especially those communities who are poor and discriminated, in order to improve their lives.
That's a tough order. I mean, because it's just so many interests, right? And so
Yeah.
people are so disconnected from the communities they serve. So that's a tall order right there. Well, that being said, I also wanted, we were a theater, and I'm a visual artist, and now I'm in charge of this theater. So I just wanted to also, on a little lighter note, perhaps pick your brains as to what kind of theater Jaime Estades likes, or a memorable play, a memorable work of fiction, perhaps a painting. What do you like? Because that we have never talked about when we've been discussing whether the play or other. What's the aesthetics? Which ones? What do you like? What do you do?
Well, I don't like musicals.
All right.
I think some musicals are good, but the majority of the musicals that are on Broadway in general, that I have seen.
Names. I want to put you on the spot. I want names. Not that you.
Oh, no.
What you like? What do you like?
Well, I don't remember the names, but everything is so white. To start with, I'm sorry, but it's too white.
Now we're talking about theater, particular. I want to talk about theater and literature.
Theater. And the dances are so white, the music is so white, the relationships are so white, the themes are so white.
What about the Gloria Estefan musical? You don't like the Gloria Estefan musical or something like that?
I never saw it, but the other problem is that if I want to see something different from that, we don't have access to it. I'm sure that there is a lot of, thank God for Lin Miranda, that there was a breakthrough, but it's Lin Miranda who did the breakthrough. There are 20, 30, 40, 50 other people online waiting all their life to get in, and they don't get in. So there is this barrier. That's why Latea is important, you see.
Right.
That's why
Hamilton, did you see Hamilton, or you haven't seen it yet?
I saw it on PBS because I couldn't pay for the, it was too expensive. But I saw it on PBS, and the lyrics, look, everything was perfection. Everything to me, the dances, the illumination, the direction, the writing, everything was perfection. I don't care much about the founders. I don't care much about, I teach about the founders. I teach about Hamilton. So there are issues with that, but in art, there are always licenses that are taken, and that's part of the business. But I think that every aspect of that play was done by experts. I mean, it was so well done.
Yeah.
But I think that that's what our community brings, that is so different from the typical Broadway play. Now, do they want to hear us, Miguel?
Well, if Hamilton is any indication, I think that brilliant amalgam of our perspective, like you say, of course, crystallized to the genius that is Lin-Manuel Miranda, and then addressing the founders. I mean, like you said, it contains everything, and yet it's got our imprint. So I think people listen.
No, people, but this is the thing. After Hamilton, have we break through again? You see, we cannot be, it's like the Oscars.
5 sessions, maybe. I'm going to put I already put money. I'm going to put more money in 5 sessions. So maybe it's that kind of an opportunity for a play like this now, with that imprimatur from Columbia University, and to keep workshopping, like you say, and to bridge that gap between therapy, academia, and entertainment. Also honoring your values and the less represented folk. It's just a beautiful.
Look, the public theater was supposed to come to Latea to see it.
I remember you were saying, right?
And they were interested. They never show up. They never follow up with us. They were interested because they had conversations. They read the script. They promised. We didn't force them. They, you see, things like those accidents usually tend to happen in our communities, not in other communities.
What about literature? Are you reading anything that you would recommend us or that you would like to call attention to?
Well, I'm going through 100 Years of Solitude again.
Okay, wow. How come? I read El Amor en los Tiempos del Cólera because we were under the pandemic, so I thought about cholera. So I read him recently during our time we were locked away. Why Gabriel Garcia Marquez? Why now?
Well, I have three heroes. One of them is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I'm not going to tell you the other two. But Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Carlito La Sombra. I know. Carlito La Sombra. I can tell.
Yeah. Churumba. Entonces, so the thing is that, where were we?
We're talking about literature, your heroes.
Oh, why Gabriel Garcia Marquez? Because you read the first page of 100 Years of Solitude.
You're already hooked.
The perfection of every sentence, the visualization that you immediately engage in every sentence, that you can see an image of a town, of a person, of a situation, and you can see it clearly in your mind. And the next sentence supporting the other sentence. It's like everything was planned for 1,000 years.
Right.
You know, the play itself, it was like it took 1,000 years to be written when it was not. But it's 100 Years of Solitude. So I wonder if Gabriel Garcia Marquez, when he put that name, that title there, was because when he was in France writing it, that's what he was feeling in that room that he said that he spent, that never went out, like for 4 months in which he was writing. He said, I never went out. So 100 Years of Solitude, well, you have to be really lonely when you're writing. You know that. That's extremely important.
It's the pandemic, the whole shutdown. You think that has that intensity? You wanted that intensity while in lockdown, or as we are all confronted with the isolation of the pandemic?
Maybe unconsciously, because that's the book that I pick. And the second time, it reads better than the first time. He has an expression that is very vulgar. I don't know if I can say.
A few of them, but which one is your favorite?
Can I say or not? Can I?
Vale,
okay, so he says, if shit was like money, if shit had an economical value, if shit was like money, poor people will have no assholes. Now, vulgar, funny, but there is a whole philosophy, an economical philosophy behind that sentence. You see, that is genius. When you can put in one short sentence a whole economical philosophy of exploitation of what is happening in Latin America, in one sentence, that is a genius writer. Now, most of the lines in that book are at that level, you know, and also without taking away from the narrative, from the interest that you have in the story. So you didn't have a sentence that it was cute just because you want to put the cute sentence there. It's because every sentence makes sense in the narrative. So to me, that's a genius. And I don't think that still we haven't give him all the credit that he deserves.
Well, talking about that, and on that note, since we're talking about such an inspiring genius, both for you, for me, and most everybody else, Jaime, what's next? I mean, I know you are now going to be very, very involved with the with this very exciting opportunity to produce and to keep developing 5 sessions as a standalone, also as a class, also in so many regards. It's really a work of art that has many, many possibilities. But what else have you thought of? Do you have another piece or
Well,
something else?
we did a piece at Latea, a reading.
Yes, I remember.
That has been improved, I think. I have worked on it. It's called now In the Name of the Father, the Son, and the Bird, because there is a bird in the play. And it's political too, but it has to do more with religion, the influence of religion in society, but especially in poor and working class communities. And it has a little bit of mysticism, and that one is ready to go. Now I feel more comfortable with it. And that reading that I did at Latea helped me to listen to what I was writing. And that's why the readings are so important. And also, by the way, congratulations with the reading, season that you had when I was there, that every month, that also was very, very, very helpful for writers.
No, we're trying to keep on with something like that, but readings are challenged by the new technology. So we're kind of doing little videos, a little thing here and there, and we're doing a lot of streaming. So thank you, but we can't wait for that, for a return of the audience, particularly with that intimacy of the reading series. But we'll see. Bueno, unas últimas palabras. I like to keep, como decía Quevedo, lo bueno si breve, 2 veces bueno. We've had an effortless 45, 50 minutes. I don't know, because one thing has led to another. And before I say goodbye and invite everybody to this sort of 21st century Bernardo Vega of sorts, our good friend, our board member, playwright, and just, thinker extraordinaire, Jaime Estades. Come see the play, everybody. I want to charge $3 because, the ship must sail on. Latea has to sail on. So it'll be a $3 cover charge, but we're going to be streaming it this Friday coming up at 8 o'clock. So don't miss it. Both of you saw it before, so you can compare it, this version, because this is the version from Julia de Burgos, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's the original, and it was 1 camera, 1 shot, no set, and it's amazing. When the story makes sense, you don't need set, and you will see the audience reacting to the play in a very positive way.
So before the last word, again, come Friday, this is the day after tomorrow. We're gonna go and show you this incredible play that we had the privilege of putting up here, and that Jaime is tooling with those folks at Columbia. But then, last words, Jaime, if you'd like to give us something before we quit.
Well, the only thing is basically thank you for putting the play online, but the most important thing is that we need to support institutions in our communities like Latea. Everybody should, the minimum that you can do. I don't want to hear people complaining all the time about we should do this, we should do that, we haven't done this, we haven't done that, when all you have to do is you move first instead of waiting for other people to move. Latea needs the help. Latea is an institution. Latea has created talent. That's where a lot of our best writers, actors, and producers have come up. I remember seeing a play by Cándido Tirado like more than 25 years ago there, and I was amazed. And when I went there, the theater was in such a bad condition that I almost fell from one floor to another through a hole. And it's still, people show up to see plays there. So Latea is in better condition now. It's great, it's beautiful. The rehearsal rooms are the best rehearsal rooms in the city of New York. And I can tell you that. for dancing, for singing, for plays. They have 3 huge rooms there that are great. The space is great. They have a bar right there. You know, it's perfect. It's just that there is a gem that has to be rediscovered. And the work that you are doing, and Frank, and you know, giving everything, it needs our support. So please, everybody, support Latea.
Well, and I wish we were personally all together, but we aren't. So please, let's finish with a big round of applause for this incredible playwright, attorney, and social and a paladin of social justice. Muchas gracias, Jaime. Buenas noches. Thank you.
Gracias a ti.